Hello and welcome. I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching NewsX World. You join us as we continue to cover the upcoming Alaska summit between President Donald Trump and President Vladimir Putin. We have some updates for you. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskiy says Russia's latest push to demonstrate military strength in the east has failed. He noted the following.
Ми отримуємо також доповіді з регіонів України після російських ударів. Суми, російський удар по центральному ринку, Дніпровщина, удари по містах та підприємствах, Запоріжжя, Херсонщина, Донеччина, свідомі російські удари. Війна триває саме через те, що немає не тільки наказу, але й сигналів про підготовку Москви завершувати цю війну. В день перемовин вони теж вбивають, і це багато говорить. Сподіваємось на сильну позицію Америки. Все буде від цього залежати. Росіяни зважають на американську силу. Саме на силу. Зустріч лідерів потрібна, щонайменше Україна, Америка, російська сторона. Саме в такому форматі можливі ефективні рішення. Гарантії безпеки потрібні, тривалий мир дуже потрібен. Всі знають ключові цілі. Російський намір був показати силу перед Аляскою. Фактично для окупанта це.
Meanwhile, Russian envoy Kirill Dmitriev says the upcoming talks are intended to restore US-Russia relations, not just focus on economic issues. He also emphasized that the discussions will cover the full range of bilateral matters, with Ukraine just one part of the agenda. Dmitriev characterized the move going into the Putin-Trump summit as combative. We are now joined by several guests to discuss this upcoming Alaska summit further. We're joined by Lesia Zubarana. She's a Ukrainian MP and she joins us live from the country. We're also joined by Ruben Johnson, who's the director of the Asia Research Center at the Casimir Pulaski Foundation. He joins us live from Warsaw. And we're also joined by Arvind Mahajan Lamar. He's a savings professor of finance at Texas A&M University. Thank you very much, all of you, for joining us here on this discussion on NewsX World. Lesnia, I wanted to come to you first. We are building up to the hours before Donald Trump meets Vladimir Putin as he walks down those steps in Alaska. One notable absentee, of course, any Ukrainian delegation from these talks. Can I get your initial response and your thoughts, your worries going into this summit currently happening bound for Alaska?
Thank you very much for this very important for our country discussion and I think for all the world. And if we talk about the meeting on Alaska, I would like to say that it could be, of course, very important meeting for us, but in any case, it's very difficult now to predict the behavior of Vladimir Putin, because actually you see even now, I'm in Kyiv now, and we have new air alarm just now, and few hours ago we had awful bomb attack on one of the big city on the north part of our country. About 7 people were killed, and it's in 5-6 hours before the meeting on Alaska. So the plans of Russia, the plans of Vladimir Putin, as we see, to continue this war. But we believe and we hope that President of the United States, Donald Trump, has all possibilities, has really very good motivation to stop this awful war. But for us, of course, it's very important also we have red lines. And we are very happy that before this meeting, our President Volodymyr Zelenskiy had a lot of very important meetings with the leaders of European countries, such as Great Britain, such as France, Germany. And we have together one position that all suggestions, all agreements must be agreed, first of all, with Ukraine. Actually, we are fighting now for our existing. We are fighting for our independence. And all these actions, all this war are under international law. And of course, the world must show that it's absolutely impossible in 21st century to have such awful war in any country, and actually to kill civilian people, to kill kids, because they want actually the territories of other country. So we believe and we hope that next meeting will be not only between the President of Russia and President of United States, but of course with our President, who demonstrates to all the world the resilience of Ukrainian people, and we think that he must be a part of all these negotiations.
Lesia, thank you for your participation in this discussion. Do stay with us. We are also joined by Ruben Johnson. Ruben, we have some news in that Vladimir Putin is now in US airspace. At their closest point, Alaska and Russia are about 2.5 miles apart across the Bering Strait. However, in contrast, Ukraine is about 4,700 miles away from Alaska, the meeting point of President Trump and Vladimir Putin. Your thoughts on this summit, its significance, and the absence of any Ukraine presence at the summit?
A lot to unpack there. First of all, the absence of the Ukrainians is a disgrace, because we should have learned from history that you don't divvy up somebody else's country and give it away without them there, because the consequences can be unforgiving. Secondly, it's kind of interesting that this summit is being hosted at an air base in Alaska, which is the air base that traditionally or historically has been the home to fighter squadrons that their mission was to protect the North American continent, and they would be the aircraft that would take off to meet Russian bombers if Russian bombers were coming over the North Pole to attack the United States. So I'm sure that symbolism isn't lost on President Putin. And so what he's planning on doing now, according to the latest news, is they're talking about, before the summit takes place, testing this weapon he first announced in 2018, which is a cruise missile with an onboard nuclear motor called the Burovesnik. And I just want to read for you what the Putin critic and man who was in a labor colony for several years until he was released, the former oligarch Mikhail Khodorkovsky, what he said when Putin announced this weapon in 2018 at the annual meeting of the chambers of the Russian parliament. And he said that of these, Putin claimed that tests of this missile had already taken place. And Khodorkovsky said, of these tests that have already taken place of this new missile that supposedly has an onboard nuclear engine, where did these tests take place? Overhead the territory of Russia. And of this missile with an onboard nuclear motor, what is that exactly? It is a missile that has a 5mm internal canister that holds a wildly dangerous radioactive substance. And if that missile crashes into some hill, well, you can see yourselves clearly imagine that this is territory that will be permanently contaminated. And I do not know, but does Putin understand this? And the people who are listening to him, do they understand this? These people who are watching and applauding him as he describes this missile, those people, do they realize what they are being told? They're being told that Chernobyl is flying overhead above them. And that's the man coming to this meeting today, and he's going to test this missile before the meeting to make a statement. Typical, radical, dangerous, irresponsible brinkmanship. This is absolutely the world's most dangerous man.
Yes.
And they complain about Donald Trump. Give me a break.
Ruben, thank you very much. Do stay with us. We're also joined by Arvind Majahan Lamar. Arvind, Of course, a significant date, a hugely significant date in the geopolitical calendar. Onlookers of Ukraine and European powers remain today are focus locked on what's going on over in Alaska. How should should NATO be worried about a US Russia agreement, perhaps struck without European input here?
Well, I am glad that the negotiations seem to have started. I agree with the previous two speakers about the concerns, and I share those concerns. But notwithstanding those concerns, what are the alternatives? From a practical viewpoint, things have been moribund. Not much has moved in as far as bringing the war to an end. And from my viewpoint, this is a good start. I don't think this is an end. Some people have called this meeting Yalta 2.0, being reminded of the 1945 summit, where the victors, US, UK, and Soviet leaders, carved up the post-war spheres of influence. I just don't see it that way. We have traveled too far away from Yalta 1 to call this Yalta 2.0. I see it as a start of a conversation. Yes, it would have been ideally desirable if President Zelensky was on the table as well. But things have not moved in a manner which the rest of us might want to see it move. We have players here who have strong opinions. They have significantly invested strong stakes and are seemingly inflexible.
Yeah.
So to me, the choices were either to start a conversation or let things be as they were. I did not see the resolution of Ukraine, given the status quo, of leading to some kind of a resolution. I see this as a start. I think we should not read too much into it. We can conjecture what the President Trump's motivations might be, perhaps to establish a reputation of a peacemaker and a deal maker. We don't know what the motivations are. We can conjecture on what President Putin wants out of this. We have some idea that he wants territory. We have idea that President Zelensky wants the territory back. But there doesn't seem to be any clear resolution. And I think this is a start of just trying to get more information of where we go from here. I will tell you this. I don't think the future of Ukraine is going to be decided in this meeting. I just don't imagine a situation where Ukraine is not on the table and where the views of the Europeans are not considered to come to some kind of a steady state solution.
Arvind, thank you very much. Do stay with us. Lesia, I wanted to come back to you. Earlier, Volodymyr Zelenskiy, the Ukrainian president, said that Ukraine is counting on America. How do the people of Ukraine, the people of Kiev, feel about this statement and the pressure that is now being put on Donald Trump, a man who ambushed the Ukrainian president in the White House press room?
I would like to say that we highly appreciate all that financial, all that military and intelligence support from United States during this last 3.5 years. And of course, we are concerned about our future, because actually, if we talk about plans of Russia, we see that they don't want to stop. And actually, without support of our international partners, and we think that United States is one of the biggest partners for us, it will be very difficult for us to be in this war and to struggle. And I have some reaction also to our speakers. We have very clear plan, and we have very good points and our vision about the finish of this war. First of all, we are fighting, as I mentioned, not about territories. We are fighting for our country, for our independence and for our existing. And of course, we are not ready to recognize that occupied territories which were occupied by Russia, now this is...
Okay. Lesia, thank you very much. We have some breaking news coming in where US President Donald Trump has told Fox News that if his meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin doesn't go well, he is prepared to walk away from the talks. We have and are joined by Joshua Barnes, who is anchor and correspondent, to give us more context behind this. Joshua, what do you make of this statement?
Yes, I think this rhetoric from Donald Trump is clearly threatening in terms of his motivations in trying to get these talks towards a satisfactory place in which he sees can be built upon. Of course, it's interesting. Trump's rhetoric is often questioned. We have guests and experts on this news channel regularly who also make that point that Trump's rhetoric isn't fixed. He doesn't have one point of view that stays that way for weeks and months on the same topic. He often does change his tone, but I'm keen to look at his rhetoric in recent weeks, and of course those tariff threats, those sanctions threats, those secondary tariffs now placed on India, the only country so far for them to be placed on, but this is based on the purchase of Russian oil. Trump has gone strong on Russia, yet keeping the door open for diplomacy. I think Trump here is sending a message to the Russian delegation. There has to be progress towards peace. Of course, the backdrop of this, Donald Trump says that the Russia-Ukraine conflict was going to be ended in the first day of him taking office for a second time. That, of course, has not happened. The US have sent a special envoy, Steve Witkoff, to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow on multiple occasions. Yet no peace deal has been agreed despite pressure. So I do see this as rhetoric and nothing more, but the threat is there, and of course the world will be waiting. Donald Trump is no stranger to leaving summits and meetings. In 2018 he did the same at the G7 summit during his first term. So and of course in the recent G7 summit he had to leave given the ongoing situations geopolitically, and of course the Israel-Iran tensions and conflict that ensued from there. So Trump is unpredictable, he can be spontaneous, and we don't know where his next step is, but this rhetoric is going to resonate with Russia.
Thank you much for providing that context. We have more statements from the US president where he says he wants to see a ceasefire in talks with the Russian president and warned that he would not be happy if it doesn't happen today. Trump added that Europe is not telling him what to do and cautioned that nothing is set in stone. He also said he does not know what would define the summit as a success. We're now joined by John Rossamondo, who is the president of Viking Research Associates. He joins us live from Washington, D.C. John, thank you very much for joining us here on the program. John, we've just heard two statements from the Russian president, the American president. One saying that he will walk away from the talks if this summit does not go to plan or if a ceasefire doesn't happen. And he also says that he wants to see a ceasefire today. Your thoughts on Donald Trump saying this before a trilateral meeting with President Zelensky joining the talks? Apologies, Rubin Johnson, apologies for that. I addressed that question to you.
I'm sorry, say that again. I thought you were asking something, just very quickly. I'm sorry.
My apologies. We've just heard two statements from US President Donald Trump, one being that he is prepared to walk away from these talks, the second being that he wants to see a ceasefire this very day. Your thoughts on this statement, coinciding with the information that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskiy has not been invited to Alaska?
Well, I've heard other stuff that Trump has said. He's also said that he will not make any kind of a deal of any kind with the Ukrainians not present. So there's not going to be any decision, if he is good to his word, on territory or anything else during during these discussions. He could walk away simply because, in my estimation, Putin is playing a game. Putin is going to put some impossible conditions forward, and he's going to try to get Trump to pressure Zelensky to accept them. And if Zelensky rejects any effort by Trump to pressure by Trump to accept Putin's conditions, then Putin can say, oh, well, it's all Zelensky's fault. He's the obstacle to peace. He's the guy who won't agree. And I'm afraid that's the way that this thing is going. And Putin wants this territory in Donetsk, in the Donetsk Oblast, particularly. He's been trying for 11 years, count them, 2014 to now. His military has been trying for 11 years to take that entire province, and they can't do it. And they can't do it because they can't beat the Ukrainians. They can't do it because they've destroyed their own military. They can't do it because during a period when they were rearming, all the money was siphoned off in corruption. So he wants to do what every dictator wants to do, win without fighting. And this would be disastrous for Ukraine. So to reference a statement by one of the previous commentators, no, this is not Yalta 2.0, but it could be Munich 1938 2.0, because if Putin were to be given the rest of the Donetsk province, that would be giving the Russians this fortress belt, these 4 cities and other localities that stretch for a 30-mile length of territory. This is the defensive line against the Russians. And it would be like what we did to the Czech Republic. We gave Nazi Germany the Sudetenland. The Sudetenland contained all the fortifications the Czechs had built to keep the Germans out. Now they're naked and defenseless. And then what happens 7 months later? The Germans just walk in. That's what Putin wants. And if we're stupid enough to give it to him, we deserve everything that people say about us. That's bad.
Thank you very much, Ruben. We're once again joined by Lesia. Russia has denied these attacks on Sumy and accuses Ukraine of trying to disrupt the summit. What are your thoughts on this, Lesia, and the rhetoric coming out of the Kremlin? We have seen this change over and over again, the objective of the talks, the most recent message being that solving the war in Ukraine is not the leading and only reason for these talks. It's also to strengthen US and Russian relations. What are your thoughts on this, Lesia?
Actually, we live in these conditions when we have every day, every night, these bomb attacks during the last 3.5 years. And you're absolutely right. Even today, before the summit, they also realized a new bomb attack on Sumy, where they killed a lot of civilian people. So for us, the most important signals, the most important results of meetings between President Trump and Putin. In future, I am absolutely sure that we need the meeting with President Trump and Putin and Volodymyr Zelenskiy. The first one is ceasefire. Russia must realize ceasefire. The next one, of course, as I mentioned, according to our constitution, we have the territories of Ukraine, and we are not able, according to the international law, according to the Ukrainian law, to recognize the territories which were occupied by Russians, that is Russian territories. The next one, for us, it's very important. If the result of the summit will not be very good, so United States, European countries must strengthen the sanctions. Because now, without a sanctions track, without economic actually track, it's impossible to let Russia to stop. And of course, for us, very important lives of our people. And In any case, we kindly ask President Trump, we kindly ask other European leaders to exchange our prisoners of the war, civilian people and soldiers, all to all.
Yes, Les, thank you very much. We now have a statement that we finally have obtained that Donald Trump said prior aboard the Air Force One as he left for Alaska. Let's take a listen into his statement.
I can't tell you that. I don't know. It's there's nothing set in stone. I want certain things. I want to see a ceasefire. This is not to do with Europe. Europe's not telling me what to do. But they're going to be involved in the process, obviously, as will Zelensky. But I want to see a ceasefire rapidly. I don't know if it's going to be today, but I'm not going to be happy if it's not today. Everyone said it can't be today, but I'm just saying I want the killing to stop. I'm in this to stop the killing. You know, we're not putting up any money. We're making money. They're buying our weapons, and we're sending them to NATO, and NATO's sending us big, beautiful checks. But that I don't care about that. I care about it was a big factor when Biden spent $350 billion and got nothing. But what I do care about is they lost last week 7,011 people were lost, almost all soldiers. 36 people in a town which got hit by a missile, but over 7,000 soldiers.
Arvind, I wanted to come to you next. Donald Trump was very clear there that he, in reality, does want to see a ceasefire happen today. Do you think Donald Trump is truly pursuing peace or a political win, a campaign promise that he has yet to fulfill along his journey for a Nobel Peace Prize?
Yeah, that's a great question. I wish I was a psychologist or a psychiatrist of a quality who could read people's minds. But unfortunately, that's not the case. We can conjecture on his motivations. If I had to guess, I think President Trump does want to be seen as a peacemaker. He has gone out of the way, even at the expense, for example, of making India mad by insisting that he's the one who stopped the war between India and Pakistan. He is trying to do something in Israel and Gaza as well. I think he's trying hard to leaving a legacy of a peacemaker, but then he has the legacy of a deal maker, which he wants to burnish as well. So unclear to me what his motivations are, but either way, I think it is good for the world that the President of the United States has gotten involved in trying to create peace in what seems like an intractable war at this juncture. Because the gap is so much. Russia has so much territory of Ukraine. They have Crimea. There are no signs, people thought that the Russian economy will crumble and there'll be some kind of a political upheaval in Russia as well. But we really have not seen signs of that. They are marching along steadily. Their economy, notwithstanding what I hear is hollowing out, still is holding up. So not clear to me what the resolution is going to be other than starting this conversation. And I think whatever President Trump's motivations might be, I think good will come out of it to the extent that we will have clarity on the intention of President Putin, and we'll have clarity on where the US stands and how far it is willing to go. And on the flip side, I think the Ukrainians have some very hard thinking to do. Because while it is true that's in their constitution, that they cannot give any land away, and that would not be unusual because that's really in the constitution of every country. The question is, there's got to be some kind of a meeting of the minds which is halfway. And, a good deal is always where everyone walks away unhappy. And my guess is that that is what this deal is going to be. But we just have to see how this gets played out today. Clearly, Russia wants a longer-term relationship with the US. I think that's been one of their primary motivations of coming to the table. they want broader talks beyond Ukraine, related to trade, related to arms control, related to energy, related to critical minerals, related to space exploration. So I think President Putin has a much larger agenda in mind. I don't think President Trump
Yes.
minds working on that agenda. But in the narrow context of Ukraine, I'm just curious what comes out of this meeting.
Yes, Arvind, thank you very much. Lesia, let's finish with just a question from yourself. Trump has obviously floated the idea of security guarantees, but outside NATO. Would Kyiv accept that, given their quest for NATO membership that is still ongoing and was ongoing before the Russia invasion? And is there a scenario, of course, in which Ukraine would agree to cede territory in exchange for peace, despite Volodymyr Zelenskyy's statement that this is off the table?
Thank you. First of all, of course, for us to have security guarantees is very important, because actually the war with Russia started not in 2022, but in 2014. And because we hadn't any security guarantees, and in that time, big military support, you see that in 2022, they continued. And we're absolutely sure that without our participation in alliance, without any additional security guarantees, we will have the same scenario in future. So it's also the question of sovereignty, and Ukraine has the rule to decide in which alliance Ukraine could be a participant. We believe that Donald Trump and European partners also understand this, and they will, with us, in collaboration with Ukraine, will develop all these security guarantees for us. And the second question, as I mentioned, we are not ready now to talk about the territories under Russian control, about recognition of the territories as Russians. Because according to the international law, when one country make invasion to other country, it's absolutely under international law, and it's impossible to recognize that actions, that legal actions.
Yes, thank you very much to all our guests that have joined us in this discussion. That is all that we have time for, but we will continue to bring you hourly updates as we count down to that huge meeting in Alaska between US President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin. We will also continue to bring you all the international news updates straight to you. Thank you very much for joining us.